So I'm Barry Feldman, New York City licensed tour guide. I'm delighted that you're joining Jane's Walk and Leslie this morning to discover the past theater culture on the Lower East Side. We're just waiting for a few more people to come into the Zoom chat, and then we'll begin. I'm going to repeat this, but I'm also going to say it now. If you have questions, I'll be happy to take them at the conclusion of the program. Just put your question or discussion point into the Q&A, and I'll be happy to try to answer. So we're just waiting for a few more people. Weather is very pleasant today, not too much sun in the East Village, but very pleasant. And I should also point out that while the major theme of today's tour is Yiddish theater, we are in the East Village, and so it's just too difficult to pass some of the wonderful landmarks of this neighborhood and not point them out. It's also interesting to remember that when the Yiddish theater was in its heyday, let's say 1900 to 1945 or 50, the East Village was not the East Village. It was the Lower East Side. Lower East Side really extends from Brooklyn Bridge to East 14th Street. So how did it become the East Village? Well, in the 1950s, when the 3rd Avenue came down, there was now one clear expanse between East Village, between West Village and the East. And so the real estate developers took on the name East Village, which added a little aplomb to this neighborhood, and it became East Village. But so we are really on the East Side, East Village. And the third name that you may be familiar with is Alphabet City, which begins one block east of First Avenue, from Avenue A to Avenue D.
We're still coming in.
Okay, so welcome folks who are coming in. Please find a comfortable sofa to sit on. A cup of coffee is free. All these things are possible through Zoom. So there are advantages, I guess. But make yourself comfortable, and we will be together for perhaps an hour, maybe a few minutes more, as we stroll down 2nd Avenue, which was the site of the Yiddish Rialto.
We got a solid 50, Barry. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, I'm told that we have a packed house, so let's go. Before we begin, I want to thank the folks at Jane's Walk for the help they gave us in becoming part of the activity, and for providing New York City walkers with the opportunity to walk during this strange time. I would also like to thank Richard Moses and Lesby. Richard is the president of Lesby, for sponsoring today's tour. And I also want to acknowledge Laura Sewell, who is my fellow board member at Lesby, for her technical assistance and wise advice. And we do have a walker who's brave enough to walk in the street. So that's my friend Owen Collins. Brave guy, what can I tell you? So we're ready? Okay, so let's just take a look at that building across the street. Village East, it says, but it is the home of the Yiddish Arts Theater, or the Jaffe building, way back to 1926. We're going to talk about its exterior and its interior. The primary actor and impresario who worked from there. But first, I want to just cross the street carefully and call your attention to the building diagonally across the street. Its intact cornice really speaks to the name of the building. The name of the building is the Onyx Port, and it is a beautifully, beautiful built building, probably in the early years of the 20th century. It is so beautifully ornated, but not overpowering. Now I'm going to interrupt myself because, as you probably hear, a siren is coming down. Okay, I think he's passed. Nope. If you look at the top story, notice the beautiful ornamentation around the windows. You have a segmented arch, an architrave. There's a frieze between the arch and the architrave. And then you have these window embellishments that are coming down. That same exact design is repeated on the third story level. And the other levels have less ornate designs, which means the building is not as overpowering as some of the other buildings in the East Village, but it's a beautiful, well-kept building, and it's just too nice not to comment about. So, yes, I do want to look, thank you. I do want to, while I am not an admirer of graffiti on public buildings, I forgive this one. Notice above the theater to the left of the entrance, art is the only escape. And I think that could be very, very fitting at this time. So we're going to cross the street and take a look at the exterior of the building. Yes, so as you can see, there is a Moorish influence. They call it Neo-Moorish or Alhambric influence. You have the curved windows and the plaster blocks and a very, very ornate arch around the entrance. It's a beautifully designed building, not terribly imposing to the street, but very distinctive. The building, as we're going to see in a minute, was built in 1926 by the actor impresario Moises Schwartz. He moved here from his former building, which is a little bit north Irving, actually Irving Plaza. You may know that that building. So the first thing I'd like to show you is the Cornerstone, which is written in Hebrew and English. You will not be surprised to learn that the Hebrew says exactly what the English says. May 23rd, 1926. Yiddish theater is in its heyday at this point. So let's talk a little bit about Moises Schwartz. He was considered the great dramatic actor. No comedy, no music, just straight drama. And he did some really exceptional things. Hamlet in Yiddish. He translated Oscar Wilde into Yiddish. He did Hedda Gabler in Yiddish. He also adapted several Yiddish novels like Joy Chappelle and a lot of the work of Sholem Ash into Yiddish. He was considered the real serious actor. And so this was his bailiwick. This was his home. When the Yiddish Theater, I just would like to show you something else. When the Yiddish Theater though closed, there were other theaters went in. But if you notice, it says Jaffe Arts Theater building. Jaffe was the developer and the guy who put the money up. So if you put the money up, then you deserve to have your name memorialized, and it's still on the building. Now, initially, this was not the main entrance, but if you follow me, we're going to go around the corner and take a look at the original main entrance, which is over here. You see the ornamentation on each side, above the doors on each side. And again, there's that arch brickwork. I'm not certain, but I think the reason that they initially had the entrance over here was to eliminate more foot traffic on 2nd Avenue. So there was an easy egress to the building. But again, there's some really lovely architectural elements to this building. Again, the ornamentation over there, the pilasters, it's lovely. Okay, so let's continue walking down 2nd Avenue.
Interior shot to show?
Oh, the interior. Thank you for reminding me. This building shares something with the Chrysler building. And Richard, perhaps you can give us an image inside, because the interior of this building, as the Chrysler building is an internal landmark, and that's something that not many buildings are distinguished with. It is absolutely beautiful, beautiful mosaics. The main theater, which seats 1,200, has this beautiful star of David in the ceiling. So the neo-Moorish or Alhambra design continues in the interior of the building, but now it has Hebrew motif. So it's really beautiful. I don't know if you could see it, but it also has polychromatic flourishes. So when the lights go out, you suddenly see these beautiful chrome-looking, shiny blue and silver and gold lights that appear. It's really a lovely, lovely building. So next year, folks, when we do this, we're going to go into the building, which I have access to, but again, we're in strange times. So let's continue walking back to 2nd Avenue and notice that across the street, there is a restaurant called String 2. That is the original home of Cafe Royale. So you may ask, what is Cafe Royale? It was the Yiddish Sardis. So just imagine a Saturday night, actors who are between their appearances on the stage at Yiddish Arts Theater or any of the other theaters in the neighborhood. They would go and grab a cup of coffee or a plate of blintzes. Casting directors were looking for new talent. Producers were there trying to raise money. Directors also wanted a job. So it was a real hub of Yiddish theater non-performance. However, it also attracted some other folks from throughout the city. So the author John Dos Passos used to come here. E. Cummings, the poet, used to come here. Kitty Carlisle and her husband, whose first name I don't remember at the moment. Anybody remember? Morse Hart, I'm sorry, Morse Hart. Um, they came very often. So it was a real center of lively literary and artistic talk and camaraderie. Right now, it's a restaurant that I'm happy to say has, I think, survived the pandemic. So let's return to Second Avenue. And as we walk to our next site, I would like to talk about the development of Yiddish theater. Initially, the ancient rabbis forbid Yiddish theater. They said it was any theater. They said it was really a pagan ritual. But you can say I don't. You could ban it. You could say don't do it. You can discourage people, but that doesn't mean that that's really going to work. So people were interested in theater, and I'm certain many attended the circuses and things like that. And we do know that by the Middle Ages, though, mummers began to appear at the Jewish holiday of Purim. Now, some of you may know the story of Esther. It's really a very bawdy bedroom farce in a way. And so the mummers would pick up those themes and march around the town with some very racy narrative. This did not this did not appeal to the civil leaders or the rabbis because of its racy content, but it was very, very popular among the folk. This develops into a second stage where first become secondary, and there are performances put on in people's homes. So you hired a few folks and they would tell jokes and sing songs, but there's still no established Yiddish theater. Yiddish theater becomes established. Actually, we even have a date, 1876, by a fellow called Abraham Goldfaden. Goldfaden was a very talented songwriter and poet, but he was a failure at everything else. He failed medical school. He was a failed editor. He was a failed businessman, but very talented, in poetry and in the arts, let's say. One night, he is now living in Jassy, Romania, and goes to a wine garden called the Pommel Verde, Green Tree, and he is listening to a very popular singer who actually is singing one of his songs. And so he approaches him and says, would you like to collaborate? You sing my songs, and I'm going to write hits around more traffic. I'm going to write some skits around the songs, and the fellow thieves, Goldfield, and they presented at Pommel Verde. Goldfaden wants to be a star, but again, he's only good at writing and directing and writing. He's not a performer. And puts half of the place asleep. Rodner gets up and sings, and Goldfaden admits that he's not a performer, but he does become, writes many, many Yiddish plays. He directs, he produces, even paints the scenery, establishes touring groups. He really, really establishes Yiddish theater. And we're going to talk a little bit more about him in a little while. But right now, that wonderful East Village landmark and that is St. Mark's Episcopal Church. There's a beautiful square in front of the church that people just like to sit down and rest, and the pigeons like to seek food. So St. Mark's Episcopal Church was known for its very cutting edge social activities. Edna Vincent Millay read her poetry here. Isadora Duncan danced here. Different cultural groups, Martha Graham's group danced here. And protest groups often presented their policies and programs here. You may notice the signs, the banners, St. Mark's, Racial Justice, and LES. The other one is St. Mark's Committed to Truth. It's a very classical building. I'm going to shut this. I'm sorry, but I forgot to shut my phone. But that's okay. So it's a very lovely classical building. It's the second oldest church in New York City, the oldest being Trinity. And looking rather dour and sour is Peter Stuyvesant, statue thereof, who is buried here. Now, Stuyvesant was a very committed Calvinist and also a very bigoted Calvinist. No other religion had any value to Stuyvesant. Why is he buried here at St. Mark's Episcopal? Because initially this was part of his bowery meaning farm. And when he died, he owned this land. It was a nice spot to be buried. Now it's either his grandson or great-grandson who eventually sells this land to the Episcopal Church. I don't think, maybe that's why Stuyvesant looks so bitter, because he's unhappy being buried in Episcopal holy place. So let's look at something else that's very interesting here, and is really an anomaly in New York City's grid. You know, cross streets just run parallel, East 9th, East 10th, East 11th, and there is usually no street that suddenly diagonally appears. But this is what we have here. We have East 10th Street, which is a running east-west, but have a diagonal street that joins it, and that is Stuyvesant Place. Guess who that's named after? Now, East 10th Street, which is really lovely, lovely. Lots of the buildings here were put up by James Renwick, who was an architect of his time, very accomplished architect, and he built these houses. Stanford White, the architect, was born on East 10th Street. So that's all part of East Village lore. Oh yes, so Laura points out, if you look just straight ahead, the beautiful wisteria that's clinging to that building. It's really lovely. It's a sign of spring, and we also have the rear garden of the church. Look how gnarled some of those trees are. They must be here for a very, very long time. Okay, so let's continue to the corner and to busy 2nd Avenue as we stroll the Rialto, or those of you who may know the word spazier, take a walk down the street. But I would like to point out, as we approach the flagpole, there is a plaque in the cobblestone which says the Abe Liebwall Park. Now, who is Abe Liebwall that he deserved to have this little park dedicated to him? And the answer is, we look across the street to the present Chase Bank. He was the owner of the Second Avenue Deli, which was a real fixture on the Lower East Side, East Village, for many, many years. Liebwall was a survivor, teenage survivor of the Holocaust, and he vowed that he would never be hungry again, and that he would never let anybody else be hungry. So he opens up a small 14
Richard maybe wants to show the picture.
yes, Ambassador Richard, can you show us the exterior of the Second Avenue Deli?
You have to bear with me for a minute because
Yeah.
it's not opening, so I have to close it and reopen it.
Okay, Richard is going to show us as soon as he can get the technical work done. He opened up a 14-seat lunch counter. It was successful, and he decided that he wanted to extend it to a delicatessen. So he, when the stores on either side of him became vacant, he occupied them too. Let's walk. And so,
Can you bear with me a few more minutes?
Yes, we're bearing with you.
Okay. Thank you.
We're crossing to the Chase Bank, which was the site of, as you'll see in a minute or two, the Second Avenue Deli. Now, Liebwall, it's very, very unfortunate, but one night he was attacked, he was shot and killed. He would very often be at the deli late, and he would very often feed people late. I don't mean customers, I mean community people who needed help. So notice as we walk.
Started screen share.
Okay, Richard. So we have two images there. One image is the Second Avenue Deli, and the other is the Molly Pecan dining room. Now you may recognize the name. She was a great diva of the Yiddish Theater. And what he decided to do was honor her. They were good friends, and he named his dining room after her. And I have to add, it was a pretty smart business move as well. Now, just notice as people walk over them, there are. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm on. So notice there are stars, very granite stars that are in not very good condition. It was Liebwall's idea to honor and memorialize performers of the Yiddish Theater. Yiddish was his native, his first language, and it was really. As he learned about Yiddish theater, he really was enthralled about it and decided that he would put down these stars. Now, not everybody here was a performer. For example, you may notice, if we could read it, that this was put down to honor Daniel Liebskin, who is a world famous architect. So why is he here? Because there is one extant Yiddish theater group, the Folkspieler, and he's a very strong fan of and supporter of the folkspiener. So it was decided to honor him. Let's look at a few. But I think what I'd like to do first is recognize the father of Yiddish theater, and that's Abraham Goldstone. And it says Yiddish Theater 1876. Owen, you had a question about Goldstone?
Yeah, did he ever come to the United States?
He came twice. Once, I think, the late 1880s, early 1890s, and then again he came in 1906.
Barry, can you repeat
Yes.
the question? Because it was hard
Yes.
to hear.
I'm sorry, yes. Owen asked if Goldstone ever came to the United States.
Please, everybody help.
So yes, he came twice, as I said. He came in 1906. He was not exactly welcome because, as I said, he was an overbearing personality, and actors who had worked for him in Europe really didn't want anything to do with him. He did produce his last play, though, Bar Kochba, which at first did not receive rave reviews, but then it did, and I think out of what usually happens after you dismiss someone and they die, they become very, very famous again. So let's look at they're very, very hard to read, but I'm looking for Molly P. Kern, who is there. You can see that with her husband Jacob Kalish, who was the producer director. Molly P. Kern's, interestingly, her first language was not Yiddish. Her first language was English, but of course she grew up in a Yiddish speaking home and becomes a great star of Yiddish theater. I saw her on the night of her 55th birthday when she stopped the play in the middle and said, "Today is my 55th birthday, and I can still do somersaults and hop around the stage." And that's just what she did. And then they resumed the theater. Now, next to her is Sholem Segunda, who was not a performer. He was a lyricist and composer. He wrote the music, the song which you may know by Meir Bistashane, "To Me You Are Beautiful." It was the Depression. He needed money and he sold it to Sammy Kahn for $35. Sammy Kahn contacted the Andrews sisters. They made a record, translated it loosely into English, and made millions on it. And Sholem Segunda's mother said she'll never forgive him for selling it for $30 or so. And there are some other names. Right here, there's Pesach Burstein and his wife Lillian Lux. You may know Michael Burstein, who performs as well. Of course, not in the Yiddish Theater, but and then there's Miriam Creston at Seymour Rexite. Miriam Creston also made Yiddish movies. She went to Poland to do one or two, and here. He did not perform on stage as an actor, but he was a singer and had his own radio show on WEVD. Some of you may remember that. WEVD was they advertised as the radio station that speaks your language. So what is very, as you can see, unfortunately, the pavement is cracking and the stars are difficult to read. So there is an effort which is endorsed by several community agencies and the office of the Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer, to restore the stars. There are many, many suggestions of how to do that. They may be, new ones may be made and placed elsewhere. And these may go to institutions that would like to include them in their showings. So it would, what I'm really saying is consider this as a very important piece of Jewish history and a very important piece of Lower East Side, East Village history, because the remember that this neighborhood was the Rialto. There were 11 or 12 Yiddish theaters and 2 vaudeville houses. We'll talk about them in a little while too. So they are really integral to Yiddish theater history and East Village history. Let's go. So now we will continue down, walking on 2nd Avenue. I'll call your attention to 151, the building across the street, as another example of architecture around 1900 in the East Village. Also very, very heavily adorned. All the window enframelents around the windows, the cornerstones, the lintels, the cornice on top is intact. There's a belt course that's very ornately designed. It's a lovely building. That's just another example of architecture in the East Village circa 1900. Speaking of architecture, I really enjoy looking at the imaginative pods that different restaurants created to accommodate outdoor dining. So that was kind of fun. So what we are doing now is approaching East 9th Street, and a famous fixture of the East Village, which was not here during the heyday of Yiddish theater, and that is Veselka. Veselka Coffee Shop. Now, the East Village was a strong neighborhood, a strong immigrant neighborhood. Many, many people from the Slavic countries, from Russia, from Poland, from the Ukraine, and Veselka still features Russian and Polish delicacies like blini and pierogi. You could also get a salmon burger and a salad, but it retains those old favorites. Okay, so we're just going to continue here a little bit. Yes, we're improv because you'll see in about 60 seconds why I have to get out of the public's view. But I want to tell you a little story about one of the Veselka's predecessors, and that was a very popular cabaret called the Metronome. And it was a very popular place. And one evening, a young woman, her name is Sonia Abuzer, appears to the owner and says, will you give me an opportunity to sing to your clients? And he said, lady, I don't know you. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know what kind of voice you have. I don't know that I can impose you on my clients. And she says, one song. And if it's not well accepted, I'll walk out and you'll never see me again. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Well, this may help you. So this is what she sings. Sheiks, lovers, and jelly beans, lend me your ears. Debs, flappers, and junior vamps, what do they know concerning love? Come to me for your burning love, cause I'm the last of the red hot mamas, and I'm getting hotter all the time. I can warm the cold ones, give the old ones back their flaming youth. For I was born in the hot Bahamas, and right now I'm in lover's prime. Well, you all know the story. She was very well accepted, became a big star on Broadway, not in Yiddish theater, but she did record Yiddish records. And she changed her name from Sonia Abuza to Sophie Tucker.
You have to acknowledge
You're
Sharon
right.
and Stephen. They guessed properly.
I'm sorry?
Sharon and Stephen guessed properly.
Sharon and Stephen guessed properly. Okay, so I acknowledge you. I hope I didn't
And
upset
Miriam
you.
Fisher, too.
I hope, Miriam, I hope that my rendition of Sophie Tucker didn't discourage you forever.
Loved it.
Great, okay. So she becomes a great star. Now, the reason she changed her name, well, I guess maybe Sonia Abuza was not too lyrical, but she didn't want to, her mother was very, very much against her marriage and against her becoming a star. And so she changed her name not to embarrass her mother. Okay. So we're going to continue, but stay on this block because there's some wonderful other things to see. Yeah. Of course, I have to watch the bike traffic. Yeah. Okay. So notice these two very beautiful buildings. The one to the left, where it says in German, free library, is the first lending library in New York City. It was established by the Hoffendorfers, a Jewish family who owned and made a lot of money. They owned a German newspaper. And you know, in the 1840s, 1850s, 60s, this was a very heavily populated German neighborhood. In fact, New York City was had the third largest German-speaking population in the world. Only two cities in Germany had more. So they opened up this building, again, free lending. They're very interested in education. This building, like the Yiddish Arts Theater and like the Chrysler Building, is its interior is landmark. And there are photos of Mr. and Mrs. Ottendorfer and some of the original stacks in them. Now, the building to the right, which was called the German Dispensary, was also built by the Ottendorfers, and it offered low price medical or free medical care. It was like a sliding scale. Also beautifully designed, beautiful ornamentation. And if you go look at the entrance, it's a little hard. Happily trees are blooming, but there are busts of famous scientists, and we see the same thing right below the corners. Those are scientists from different genres, different occupations. So you have botanists, you have physicists, you have medical doctors, and it was a real boon to the people who lived in the neighborhood and couldn't afford medical care. The Ottendorfers were very, very philanthropic, and I understand that their descendants are as well. So that's kind of a nice story. So now we will continue walking down 2nd Avenue to St. Mark's Place. St. Mark's Place is equivalent to 8th Avenue. Was the avenue of the hippie, let's say. This was the center of hippiedom in the late 60s, 1970s. Between 2nd and 3rd, there are some stores that would like to pretend it's that time, but in truth, ain't no more hippies in the East Village. You can't afford to live here if you're a hippie. Okay, so we're going to wait for the traffic. The noise to pass. And I'd like to share this with you. There's a fella, Jim Powers, who, when he returned from the war in Vietnam, began to decorate the street posts, the lamp posts in the East Village. Not only the lamp posts, but also there are some buildings that he's done this to. And it is so interesting. This one was repaired not too long ago, so we can still see some of the landmarks that Powers put into his lamppost. So you see there's Minsky's Burlesque, Molly Pecan, Burns and Allen for George Burns and Gracie Allen. Burns lived in the neighborhood, so I guess that's where he included him. The Bowery Boys, the Eden. The Eden was a Yiddish theater. Salute. Can you read that, Laura?
Armed forces.
Salutes Armed Forces. Okay, so he's talking about, his own experiences. Here he has POW. I'm not certain that he was a POW, but he's honoring them. And there is Bob Hope, who Bob Hope started in burlesque and perhaps performed on 2nd Avenue because there were two burlesque houses. So it's really an imaginative, very beautifully done adornment to this is only one adornment to the East Village. And a lot of red, white, and blue. Oh, he also has, I noticed, again, referring to his service, MIA, Missing in Action. So it's not only an homage to the East Village and its stars, but also to his fellow servicemen. I keep saying this is the Yiddish Rialto, but I really should point out that Yiddish theater in New York City does not start here at all. It's to the west and the south that Yiddish theater starts. Then, as it explodes and becomes so popular, they begin to open up theaters on Second Avenue, and then you have the shops and stores and restaurants that support the theaters by catering to theater goers. I mean, the Jacob Adler, who I did not mention at the Stars, he owned a theater here. Actually, he was also, I should have mentioned, he was discovered by Goldstone. In the end, Goldstone was totally broke, and Jacob Adler supported him. Jacob Adler was a young guy trying to start a business in Odessa, in love with theater, and he's discovered by Goldstone. Now, the building across the street, about 2 years ago or so, there was a horrific explosion because the landlord of 2 buildings here inappropriately connected, to save money, the gas lines, and they exploded. Both buildings went down and 2 young men died. It was a horrible experience. So now the buildings this building is replacing replacing the 2 buildings, I guess, that are there. Now it's a chore to design a building that will fit into this landmark neighborhood. Zoning would not allow for a very tall building. And so this was the architect's rendition of maybe what a tenement would have looked like. It was built in 2020. There is a cornice, and so do you like it? Do you like the torso of the building, the way those little squares have been applied? I guess it's a matter of taste, folks. Okay, so let's continue and return to a Yiddish landmark. Okay, I think if we hustle, we can force. Okay, so we are now on East 7th Street, and we are headed to the Hebrew Actors Union, established about 1900. It was the first union formed in the United States. Precedes anything on Broadway or Hollywood. At its heyday, it had about 400 members. This is a lovely block, well shaded, with some very nice smaller homes, townhouses. Now, of course, there's a truck parked right in front of the building, but he's going away. going away. So the white building, yeah, the white building across the street. Okay.
Yeah.
The white building across the street is the Hebrew Theater Union building. It is still, the union has been disbanded, but it owns the building. The building is in very bad state, but there's always hope that that it will be restored and perhaps become a museum, honoring the past Yiddish theater. We can't see the. Okay, can we see the face there? That I don't think we could see it. A torch, a flame in a torch, which was very popular on Jewish buildings. I guess to talk about freedom. The forward building, for example, has hands and torches. And so here is the little plaque saying Hebrew Actors Union Incorporated. I mean, I remember being here, I guess among the last times that they had an activity here, and just the pictures on the wall were just wonderful. The same way you saw the Hebrew the Jewish Theater Walk of Fame, the walls were actually a wall of fame. And so hopefully they'll be able to do something. There's some talk about putting a few of the stars that we looked at before over here. Just a few, if ever they can begin to get the money together to restore the building. Okay, so let's go back to 2nd Avenue, continuing our stroll or walk. Spitza in Yiddish. Across the street is another, I guess, 1900 or so building that has those kind of belts between the windows and elaborate keystones in the lintel. It's a lovely building also. Here's the entrance to the new building, 45 East 7. Now, you know, buildings that are not well used, especially, are very prone to some kind of disaster. And so what we have here, as soon as we get to the corner, is the remains of just the facade of Collegiate Church that endured a horrific fire not so very long ago. Lovely building, really added a little charm and grace to the street. But yeah, the orange structure is bracing the facade of the building. Now, you know, uptown on Lexington, I think in the 90s, there was an armory, a very famous armory that came down. And what they left, though, is just part of the facade. And it really, you know, you walk by, you recognize what the neighborhood was like, let's say in 1900 or so when the armory went up. And I think that preserving this facade would say the same thing. It's also interesting to me, notice the two trees. One tree to the left of the entrance, severely damaged by the fire, and the tree to the right, bloomed, freshly blooming, inspiring belief in the future. So I really like the way it just so happens to work out. Now, this is Moises Bakery. Now, you can no longer buy challah here or rugala because Moshe sold and it became a French bakery with the most delicious pastries. I'm going to give this bakery a plug. It was really, really very nice. Moshe was, oh, no, before I tell you that, while we're here, notice the tile work on the walls. That's also spectacular. Now, when the bakery was here, you never saw that because that was covered and there were fixtures in front that held the pastries and baked goods. But it's nice that the French bakery restored them. I was saying Moshe was a very generous man, and when those buildings fell and the firefighters and policemen were there, of course the street traffic was prohibited, but he just closed his bakery and made just many trips with his baked goods to the firefighters and policemen. That was really very nice. So let's proceed to one more very interesting building that speaks to the Yiddish Theater and also to the East Village of the art. And we are standing in front of the Apple Bank for Savings, which is only the building's newest occupant. Way back when Yiddish Theater was in its heyday, this was a Yiddish theater. Yeah, we're going to cross the street, but we could also interrupt ourselves and look at another Jim Power creation. Now, can you read what that says though? Bill something way? Bill, is that Graham? Yes, Bill Graham's way. I know not who Bill Graham was. There are other interesting things here though as well, which we can take advantage of. Chuck Berry, B.B. King. Can you read any? I'm sorry? The band, thank you. The band. Joni Mitchell. Fillmore East, which takes us back to the Apple Bank building, which we'll see better in a second when we can cross the street.
And the Grateful Dead.
Oh, and the Grateful Dead. Thank you. Yep, I'm ready. Two cross. Yeah.
Building now.
So now, again, let's call our attention to Apple Bank for Savings. When this building opened, it was a Yiddish theater. When Yiddish theater began to decline, Lowe's bought it and turned it into the Lowe's Commodore, which was a movie theater. And right, so Richard has the screen up. And we're going to look inside as well. When it was, and then when the Commodore closes, in a little while later, it became Fillmore East, which was, and it was one of New York City's premier rock venues. Jimi Hendrix, I think Richard probably has that image up, performed there. Janis Joplin performed there. The Grateful Dead performed there. All the stars of the 70s into the 80s. And then when Fillmore East closed, it became a bar and some stuff upstairs. I don't know what kind of stuff. Probably an office. And then Apple Savings Bank took it. So, so let's go over to the shade and a good leaning place. And we should really talk about the first Yiddish theater production in the United States.
Okay, we can't sit, but you can lean if you want.
Yes, I am going to lean. I'm a premier leaner. Okay, so around 1882, 1883, a 15-year-old boy working as a cigar maker is really enchanted by the tales that a fellow worker talks about. The fellow worker says, I have two brothers, two cousins, two friends who are in Yiddish theater in Europe. And they are going to come to the United States. And the young cigar maker, Boris Tomaszewski, is so impressed with this, so impressed with the idea of theater, so impressed with the idea of Yiddish theater. After all, Yiddish is his mama lotion, what we say in Yiddish, his mother tongue. And he decides that he wants to become an actor and a producer, which was quite a nervy thing for the traffic is a killer. Another ambulance. That was a very nervy, or as they say in Yiddish, chutzpahdik thing to do, to think that he could become a great producer. But so he goes, the cigar factory is very close to a bar that he hangs out in, and he shares his desire with the owner. And the owner says to him, kid, you have gumption, you have guts. I'm going to help you do this. Get a play and produce it, and I'm going to help you. So Tomaszewski decides to use one of Goldstone's very early play, but a very great success, and it's called Kaldunya, which means witch. And he decides he's going to produce that. Now, what he's going to have is a small chorus on stage, and two performers that are going to play the multiple roles. They have young boys who play men and who play women. So he goes to, and Richard, if you can show us La Mama, but it's presently La Mama on East 4th Street. Originally, it was Stern Hall, which was basically a German gym. The German philosophy at that time was, if you have good physical health, you will also have good mental health and good moral health, good philosophical health. And they agreed to rent Stern Hall, presently La Mama, to Tomaszewski. Shortly before the play is going to open, a few days, Tomaszewski is summoned by a group that say to him, you cannot put on a Yiddish play. It is shun meaning trash. It is inappropriate, it is immoral, and it will not look good for the emerging Jewish community in New York. These were uptown German Jews who were very concerned about their image as they try to fit into New York City culture, be accepted by New York City culture, society rather. And they threatened Tomaszewski. Tomaszewski returns to Fox, I think his name was, who owns the tavern. And Fox said, they can't do anything to you. They could threaten you all you want. They can't do anything to you. But Tomaszewski continues, and he's going to hire Madame Cransfield, or Feld, who lives on the Lower East Side, who is not a professional actress, but she supposedly has the most beautiful voice. And he hires her to star in Haldunya. And he has a young boy plays other roles, and he's going to perform. And the night, and tickets go for as little as 15 or 25 cents, up to $5. Now, $5 in 1882 is a lot of money. So that showed the interest, though, that there was in Yiddish theater. And everything is all set, and she does not appear. Madame Cransfeld does not appear. Now, I heard two different versions of what happened. One version was that Tomaszewski put a wig on the kid and said, you are Madame Cransfeld, and the place rioted. I mean, you paid even a quarter. You know, it's 25 cents in 1882 is money. And you pay $5 or $3, that there's absolute stampede in the place. The other version I heard was she doesn't appear, and Tomaszewski runs to her apartment and says, I'll do anything for you. And this version is from Nahama, forget her last name, who wrote really the definitive book on Yiddish theater. He says, I'll do anything if you appear. Suddenly she felt better, her voice sounded better, and she appears, and it's a big success. 2 days later, she and her husband open up a kiosk on Delancey Street. So the story is that Tomaszewski bribed her to come and put her into business. So that was the beginning of Yiddish theater. Whether there was a stampede, whether it was very, very well accepted or not, doesn't make a difference, because either way, the audience loved it. They loved stampeding. The audience loved it, and Yiddish theater becomes part of New York City theater, and such a vibrant cultural expression. Owen, I think you had a
Yeah,
question
when
about,
did Yiddish theater begin to wane?
okay, so the question is, when did Yiddish theater begin to wane? And why? As I, by it, by the late 1940s, Yiddish theater was in serious decline. And that takes, so its heyday is, let's say, 1882 to 1950. So why does it decline? I think one reason it declined was the performers were old and there were no new young performers. For the original performers, like some people in the Stars, Jacob Adler and Pesach Furstein, Hyman Yablokov, Yiddish was their first name, except their first language, except for Molly Pecan, who was raised in a bilingual home. So there were no young people in the 30s and 40s who would perpetuate Yiddish theater. I think there was another reason too, and this is my mother's experience. This is what she shared with me. She came to this country in 1921, 12 years old, could not read English, didn't understand 3 words of Yiddish put together. There were silent movies, but she said it really wasn't enjoyable because she couldn't read the titles. And here there's Yiddish theater. So that's and then the talkies come out. So you don't have to, you can go to the movies. Because by 1929, when the talkies come out, she speaks like the Queen. And so you have the talkies, and you can also go to English theater if you enjoy theater. So that was a problem. You know what I meant to say? In the late 40s, I was very young. And I used to go to Yiddish theater with my grandmother because my parents didn't want to go. I guess they went to Broadway. And I saw, like, there was Aaron Lebedoff, who was the star in the Yiddish Walk of Fame. He had to be 75 years old, and he's playing a 25-year-old. The few hairs that he has on his head are dyed red, bleached red, and his face is totally covered with makeup. So that's my point about there were no longer young people coming in. And so the old people hung on. And that's why I think that by 1950, Second Avenue was finished. There was a very large Yiddish theater in Brooklyn that closed, and the troupe went to a dilapidated movie theater for a year or two. So that's what happened.
Close with a view of the Tisch building.
Oh, sure. So we can look at the Tisch building, which is performing arts.
Time to say goodbye.
So yes, so I guess it is time to say goodbye.
Well,
So
I think we have one question in the chat.
yes,
In the Q&A.
please.
We have a question that that's the theater that has Stomp playing, which is on the just below St. Mark's Place on the east side of Second Avenue. Was that originally a Yiddish theater?
Yes, but I'm not certain. That may have been, but I'm not certain. I think that was what they call the Romanian Opera House, but I'm not absolutely certain. We are now on East 6th Street. A block or two down was the Anderson Theater. I'm almost certain that was the Romanian.
So that's it for our Q&A questions. I did want to point out that very fortunately, this area of Second Avenue below St. Mark's Place is protected by New York City Landmarks designation. It's now part of the East Village, Lower East Side Historic District, which LESPI, Lower East Side Preservation Initiative, was instrumental in having designated about 7 or 8 years ago. So we're looking now to try to expand the East Village, Lower East Side Historic District further north to include St. Mark's Place and a few blocks to the north, and also to expand the East 10th Street Historic District, which is on the north side of Tompkins Square Park, around to the east side of Tompkins Square Park.
Thank you for that, Richard. So folks, it's time to say goodbye. Join me next year. If we come back to the Yiddish Rialto, I hope to get you into some places that we couldn't do today, or we'll do something else. So again, thank you, James Walk. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Owen. And thank you, guests who accompanied me today.
And thank you, Barry, for a phenomenal tour.
Okay.
And thank
I hope
you,
so.
Laura and Owen as well. Bye-bye, everybody.